The colossal superweapon loomed in Buenos Terra's orbit, its mere presence sending shockwaves of fear through the rebel forces. Hack's paws trembled as he worked furiously at his console, trying to make sense of the flood of data pouring in. Captain Hack squeaked, his voice tight with panic. "I'm detecting massive troop deployments all over the city. They're using the superweapon as a transport hub." Jeb's face was grim as he assessed the situation. "How many are we talking about, Hack?" "Thousands," Hack replied, his whiskers drooping. "Maybe tens of thousands. They're overwhelming our positions faster than I can track them." The palace shuddered under renewed assault, the Imperial forces pressing their advantage with ruthless efficiency. Hack's screens lit up with distress signals from their allied positions across the city. "We're losing ground in sectors 3 through 7, Killian reported, his gruff voice strained. "The resistance fighters are being pushed back to the inner districts." Zeke's usually cheerful voice crackled over the comm, now tinged with desperation. "It's a bloodbath out here, Captain. We can't hold them off much longer." Hack watched in dismay as their carefully coordinated defense crumbled under the onslaught. His racing instincts screamed at him to find a way out, to plot an escape route, but the sheer numbers they faced seemed insurmountable. Captain Hack said, his voice small but determined, "I hate to say it, but I think we need to consider abandoning our position. If we stay here, we'll be overrun." Jeb's jaw clenched as he weighed their options. The decision to give up their hard-won ground clearly pained him, but Hack could see the moment he realized the truth of the situation. "You're right," Jeb finally said, his voice heavy. "We can't win this fight. Not here, not now." He turned to address the team. "All units, prepare for immediate evacuation. Hack, I need an exit strategy, now." As Hack's mind raced to formulate an escape plan, he couldn't help but feel a crushing sense of defeat. They had come so far, accomplished so much, only to be driven back by this overwhelming force. The superweapon hung in the sky like a malevolent eye, a constant reminder of the Empire's renewed strength. As Hack plotted their retreat, he wondered how they could possibly hope to stand against such power. But even in this darkest moment, a small part of him refused to give up hope. They had overcome impossible odds before. Somehow, someway, they would have to do it again. "Everyone, move now." Jeb's voice cut through the chaos as the team scrambled to evacuate their position. Hack's paws flew over his portable console, guiding their retreat through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace. "There's a service tunnel 2 levels down," Hack squeaked, his ears twitching nervously as he analyzed the schematics. "It should lead us out to the lower city districts." The sounds of battle grew ever closer as they made their way through the once grand halls, now scarred by blaster fire and explosions. Hack's heart raced, his racing instincts kicking into high gear as he calculated and recalculated their escape route on the fly. "Zeke, Vex, cover our rear," Jeb ordered as they reached the entrance to the service tunnel. "Hack, take point with me. Your navigation skills are our best chance of getting out of here in one piece." As they plunged into the dimly lit tunnel, Hack couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. They were leaving behind not just a strategic position, but a symbol of their hard-fought victories. The palace that had once represented imperial oppression, and then briefly their triumph, was now slipping back into enemy hands. "Wait," Killian called out suddenly. "We can't leave empty-handed. The intel we gathered on Empress Aria." Jeb nodded grimly. "You're right. Hacked, can you access the palace systems remotely? Download everything we've uncovered." Hack's paws were already moving, establishing a connection to the palace mainframe. "On it, Captain, but we'll need to move fast. Once the Imperials realize what we're doing, they'll lock us out for good." The team huddled around Hacked as he worked, their weapons trained on the tunnel entrance. The distant sounds of Imperial troops grew louder with each passing second. "Got it," Hacked exclaimed, relief flooding through him as the download completed. "Everything we found about Aria, the succession, all of it. It's all here." "Good work," Jeb said, squeezing Hack's shoulder. "Now let's move. We're not out of this yet." As they continued their harrowing journey through the tunnel, Hacked couldn't shake the feeling of loss. They had come so close to victory, only to have it snatched away by the arrival of that monstrous superweapon. The tunnel began to slope upward, and soon they could see a faint light ahead. As they emerged into the lower city streets, the full impact of their retreat hit home. Columns of smoke rose from multiple sectors, and the sky was filled with Imperial ships and troop transports. By the cosmic void, Zeke breathed, his usual bravado subdued. "We've got our work cut out for us now." Jeb's face was set with grim determination. "We're not beaten yet. We've just entered a new phase of the race. Hacked, find us a safe route. We need to regroup and contact our scattered allies." As Hack began to plot their course through the hostile city, he tried to hold on to hope. They had lost this battle, but the war wasn't over. They still had the intel on Aria, and they still had each other. The fight for Buena Terra and the fate of the galaxy had taken a dark turn. But Hack knew that as long as they kept moving, kept fighting, there was still a chance. They just had to stay one step ahead of the Empire and find a way to turn the tables once again. The streets of Buena Terra had become a maze of danger and uncertainty. Hack's ears swiveled constantly, alert for any sign of approaching Imperial patrols as he guided the team through the war-torn city. "Another squad, 2 blocks east," Hack whispered, his nose twitching as he picked up the scent of ozone from their energy weapons. "We need to cut through this alley to avoid them." Jeb nodded, motioning for the team to follow. They moved silently, years of working together allowing them to communicate with just gestures and looks. The once grand capital had become a shadowy labyrinth, and Hack found himself drawing on every racing instinct he'd ever honed to navigate it. "Hold up," Killian growled softly, raising a hand. The group froze as a patrol of Imperial troops marched past the alley's entrance, barely meters away. Hack's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. His mind raced, calculating alternate routes and escape vectors. This was just another race, he told himself. A deadly, high-stakes race where the track kept changing, but a race nonetheless. As the patrol passed, Zeke let out a low whistle. That was too close for comfort. "Any idea where we're heading, little navigator?" Hack consulted his portable datapad, which he'd managed to link to some of the city's remaining functional systems. "There's an old underground transit station about 1 kilometer from here. If we can reach it, it might provide shelter and a way to move around the city undetected." "Good thinking," Hack Jeb said, his voice low but filled with approval. "Lead the way." As they made their way through the city, ducking from cover to cover, Hack couldn't help but marvel at how quickly everything had changed. Just hours ago, they had been on the verge of victory. Now, they were fugitives in a city they had almost liberated. The distant hum of the superweapon in orbit was a constant reminder of their predicament. Hack's fur stood on end every time he caught a glimpse of it through gaps in the buildings. Its presence seemed to loom over everything, a symbol of the Empire's resurgent power. "Imperial dropship, incoming," Vex hissed suddenly. "Everyone, take cover." The team scattered, diving behind rubble and into doorways as the dropship roared overhead. Hack found himself pressed against a wall, his small size allowing him to squeeze into a narrow gap. He held his breath as troops disembarked nearby, their heavy footsteps echoing through the street. For a tense few minutes, the team remained hidden as the Imperial forces conducted a sweep of the area. Hack's mind raced, trying to calculate their chances if they were discovered. But luck was on their side, and eventually the troops moved on. "That was too damn close," Killian muttered as they regrouped. Jeb's face was grim. "We can't keep this up forever." "Hacked, how much further to that transit station?" "Just a few more blocks," Hack replied, checking his datapad. "But we'll need to be careful. Imperial activity is increasing in this sector." As they resumed their cautious journey, Hack couldn't shake a feeling of dread. They were some of the most wanted beings in the galaxy now, trapped on a hostile planet with seemingly endless enemies searching for them. But as he looked at his teammates, his family, he felt a spark of hope. They had overcome impossible odds before. Somehow, they would find a way to do it again. The abandoned transit station was a welcome respite from the dangers of the streets above. As the team caught their breath in the cavernous space, Hack set to work, his paws flying over his datapad as he attempted to establish a secure connection to any remaining friendly networks. Any luck contacting our allies, Jeb asked, his voice echoing slightly in the empty station. Hack's whiskers twitched in frustration. Not yet, Captain. The Imperial jamming is strong, but I'm working on a workaround. I might be able to. He trailed off, his eyes widening as something unexpected flashed across his screen. Act. What is it? Zeke asked, noticing the navigator's sudden change in demeanor. I think I've tapped into an Imperial communication channel, Hack squeaked, his voice tinged with disbelief. And there's something here about Empress Arya. It's horrifying. The team gathered around Hack as he decrypted and displayed the intercepted messages. What they saw made even the battle-hardened Killian draw in a sharp breath. By the cosmic void, Vex whispered, her face pale. She killed her own brother. Hack nodded grimly, his paws shaking slightly as he scrolled through the data. Not just her brother. According to this, Arya systematically eliminated every potential heir to the throne. Cousins, distant relatives, anyone with even a drop of royal blood. She's been planning this for years. Jeb's face hardened as he read the details. She's worse than her father ever was. This isn't just about maintaining power. She's obsessed with it, willing to destroy her own family to keep it. And now she has that super weapon, Killian growled. A tyrant with a planet killer. It doesn't get much worse than that. As the team absorbed the shocking information, Hack continued to dig deeper into the intercepted data. Each new revelation painted a darker picture of Empress Arya and her plans for the galaxy. She's not stopping with Buena Terra, Hack reported, his voice quivering. There are plans here for a galaxy-wide purge. Anyone who ever showed even a hint of disloyalty to the Empire. She wants them all eliminated. The gravity of the situation settled over the group like a heavy shroud. They had thought they were on the verge of liberating the galaxy, only to find themselves facing a threat more terrifying than they had ever imagined. We can't let this happen, Jeb said, breaking the tense silence. Somehow, we have to find a way to stop her. Zeke, usually the first with a quip or joke, was uncharacteristically serious. But how? We're outgunned, outnumbered, and trapped on a hostile planet. It seems impossible. Jeb's eyes blazed with determination. Impossible is what we do best. We've faced long odds before. We'll find a way. We have to. As the team began to discuss potential strategies, Hack couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and resolve. The race they were in now was unlike any they had ever faced. The stakes were higher, the dangers greater, and the finish line further away than ever. But as he looked at his teammates, seeing the determination in their eyes, Hack knew they wouldn't give up. The abandoned transit station hummed with nervous energy as Hack worked tirelessly to establish contact with their scattered allies. His paws danced across the makeshift communication array he'd cobbled together from salvaged parts and his own ingenuity. Any luck? Hack Jeb asked, his voice tight with concern. Hack's whiskers twitched in concentration. I think I've managed to bypass the worst of the Imperial jamming, Captain, sending out encrypted pings now. The team waited in tense silence, the only sound the soft beeping of Hack's equipment. Suddenly, a crackle of static broke through, followed by a familiar voice. This is Colonel Tarak. Any friendlies out there? A collective sigh of relief swept through the group. Jeb leaned in, speaking into the comm. Tarak, it's Jeb. We're holed up in the old transit station in Sector 7. What's your status? Alive, but barely. Tarak's voice came through, strained but determined. We've got about 36 fighters with us, hiding in the industrial district. The Imperials are everywhere. As Jeb coordinated with Tarak, Hack continued to send out signals, searching for any other survivors. Slowly, responses began to trickle in. A group of resistance fighters in the southern districts, a handful of their allies from the palace who had managed to escape during the chaos. Even a few civilian groups who had taken up arms against the Imperial occupation. Okay, listen up, Jeb addressed the team and their distant allies through the comm. We need to regroup, but moving large numbers through the city is too risky. Hacked, can you coordinate safe routes for small groups to make their way here? Hack nodded, already pulling up city schematics on his datapad. On it, Captain. I can use the old maintenance tunnels and lesser-known paths to guide them in. It'll take time, but it's our best shot at avoiding Imperial patrols." For the next few hours, Hacked became the lifeline for their scattered forces. His racing instincts, honed by years of navigating treacherous courses, now served to guide their allies through the dangerous streets of Buenos Aires. Every successful arrival was a small victory, a spark of hope in their dire situation. Another group incoming, Hacked reported. His ears perked as he listened to the soft footsteps approaching their hideout. 5. No, 6 life signs, friendly signatures. Zeke and Vex moved to the entrance, weapons ready just in case. But their caution turned to relief as they recognized the newcomers, a mixed group of resistance fighters and palace staff. As the new arrivals were welcomed and briefed on the situation, Hacked couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. They were battered, hunted, and vastly outnumbered, but they weren't beaten. Not yet. "How many more are out there?" Killian asked, peering over Hack's shoulder at the datapad. Hack's whiskers drooped slightly. "Hard to say. I've lost contact with several groups. They could be laying low, or..." He didn't need to finish the thought. They all knew the risks. Jeb placed a reassuring hand on Hack's shoulder. "You're doing great work, Hacked. Every person you bring in is another fighter for our cause, another chance at turning this around." As Hack turned back to his communications array, ready to guide in the next group, he held on to that thought. Each life saved, each ally reunited, was a small victory against the Empire. And right now, those small victories were all they had. Hours had passed since the last group of allies had made it safely to their hideout. Hacked sat hunched over his makeshift communications array, his ears twitching at every static burst, hoping for another signal from their scattered comrades. The transit station was now a hub of hushed activity. Resistance fighters huddled in small groups, tending to wounds and sharing meager rations. The air was thick with tension and the lingering smell of blaster fire and fear. "Anything?" Jeb asked softly, approaching Hack's station. Hacked shook his head, his whiskers drooping. "Nothing for the past 2 hours, Captain. I've sent out more encrypted pings, but..." He trailed off, the implications hanging heavily in the air. Jeb nodded grimly. "Keep at it. If anyone's still out there, they'll need us to guide them in." As Jeb moved away to confer with Killian and Zeke, Hacked found his mind wandering. How had it come to this? Just days ago, they were on the verge of liberating the galaxy. Now they were huddled in an abandoned station, fugitives on a world they had almost freed. The weight of their situation pressed down on Hacked. The superweapon looming in orbit, Empress Aria's ruthless plans, the sheer number of Imperial forces hunting them, it all seemed insurmountable. For a moment, he felt a wave of despair threatening to overwhelm him. But then he looked around at his crewmates, at the determined faces of the resistance fighters who had made it to their sanctuary. He saw the same mix of fear and hope in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They weren't giving up, and neither would he. Suddenly, a faint beep from his console snapped Hacked back to attention. His paws flew over the controls, trying to isolate the signal. "Captain," he called out, his voice tight with excitement. "I've got something. It's faint, but it's definitely one of ours." The team gathered around as Hacked worked to establish communication. Through bursts of static, a voice emerged. "This is Gamma Squad. Heavy Imperial presence. Need extraction." "Gamma Squad, this is Hacked," he responded, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We're sending you coordinates for a safe route. Can you make it?" There was a tense moment of silence before the reply came affirmative. "Moving now. We'll advise." As Hacked relayed the coordinates and guided the squad through the dangerous city streets, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They might be down, but they weren't out. Every life saved, every ally reunited, was a small victory against the Empire's overwhelming force. The anxious vigil continued, with all eyes now on the entrance to their hideout. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they waited for any sign of Gamma Squad. Finally, the sound of approaching footsteps set everyone on edge. Weapons were raised, ready for anything. But when the weary, battered members of Gamma Squad stumbled into view, a collective sigh of relief echoed through the station. As the newcomers were welcomed and tended to, Jeb gathered the core team. "We can't stay here much longer," he said, his voice low but firm. "The Imperials will eventually sweep this sector. We need a plan." Hack nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. They were still vastly outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped on a hostile world. But they had something the Empire didn't: the unbreakable bond forged through countless races and battles. As the team began to discuss their next move, Hack felt a glimmer of hope. If anyone could find a way to overcome these impossible odds, it was the crew of the Broken Promise. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.